My number three is a movie called Love is Strange from 2014, starring John Lithgow, Alfred Molina, directed by Ira Sachs, written by him as well. Quick IMDb summary on the movie. After Ben and George get married, George is fired from his teaching post, forcing them to stay with friends separately while they sell their place and look for cheaper housing. So I put this movie on my list because as we were discussing, and especially on film, I think a lot of money related movies really show the bad side of people,
Hmm.
the lack of it or the excess of it really changes people for the worse. But this idea of the constancy of love and relationship and such through ups and downs of money or whatever circumstances you have in life is not really explored that much. And so when I watched this movie right when it came out, at that time I was living in LA and I would, make it a point to watch every sort of big to small movie pretty much if it appealed to me in certain ways. And Ira Sachs is definitely a director that I've watched other movies from who's just very insightful and brilliant and low key and real, but always has something very deep and meaningful to say. So I seek this movie out. And
Hmm.
since then, it's sort of been on my mind for various reasons. We'll get into those, but I think money has been a big part of it. Curious if you'd heard about this movie or had seen it before.
No, never heard of it, never seen it, never heard of the writer director before. This is
Oh,
my first time, yeah, seeing any of his films. Yeah, I think you described this his style well of just like very low key, simple, sort of lets the plot and the characters shine because
mhm.
everything else is very understated.
Mhm. Yep, exactly. But to me, not dull.
Mm.
And done in a way, and I think it's very performance oriented. And I think everybody in the cast is amazing to me, especially these two.
Oh yeah, the two leads.
You really sort of buy the intimacy that they share and the relationship that they share. But yeah, I think why this movie stuck with me is that I often thought about that, and I still think about it, which is that when you are in a happy relationship with somebody, if something happens to this relationship in an external kind of way, like
Hmm.
somebody loses a job or you lose money, or maybe you come into more money, it could be either of those things. What changes, and how
Hmm.
do you navigate that? And I think this movie does such a beautiful job of showing that if the relationship at the core is really built on solid foundation, it actually doesn't matter. You stay connected, and ultimately all these two people want to do is have each other's company,
Right.
have dinner together, have the little mundane things of life together. That's what really matters. Now, I don't think the movie is that naive or about the fact that money doesn't matter at all, because guess what, those things that I talked about, going out and having a drink or having a dinner, nice or not nice, you do require money
Right.
to be able to share the same bed or share the same roof. You do need money. That's not
Hmm.
just not going to show up out of nowhere. So, and that's why all the upheaval and sadness and tumultuousness that's caused in their lives is because of the fact that they've lost money and one person's situation has sort of changed. So it's not all black or white.
Right.
It is gray in that sense, but I think it underlines and underscores the point that if you know what really matters to you, then you can navigate this no matter what. um, but I think that it has other layers to this, which is that when you're in this situation, your own relationship might be very strong, but what about your relationship with other people, friends, family members, relatives? They may not look at the world the same way the way you do,
Hmm.
and your partner does. They might have different relationships, they might have different compromises, their own situations. So it sort of has like a very interesting community dynamic being spoken about as well, that on surface or even beneath the surface there might be people in your lives that love you and care for you, but it's not for free.
Hmm.
It does come at a cost, and it's both ways. It doesn't mean that you're not taking advantage of them. So when John Lithgow is staying at Marissa Tomei's place, and initially it's all great and amazing, but then things start to get sour because there's encroachment of space and there's judgment on what the other person does and how good are they, how bad are they. So things start to spin a little bit, even though there is that love and care initially. And that's when I guess the differences of access to money and life start to bubble up, and you start to maybe question, judge, or resent the other person based on how much access to money or what have you that they have in their life. So yeah, I don't know. Every time I watch this movie, it just sort of underlines and exposes new layers in human relationships, love, friendship, but money is always sort of part of it. It's sprinkled here and there because ultimately money is what gives you access.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about this film, and it's interesting, the IMDb plot summary kind of glosses over a little bit too. Like Alfred Molina's character was laid off, but specifically because of his love for John Lithgow. Like they're a same-sex couple that have been together for I think 30 years, and they decide to get married. And the second that they do, then Alfred Molina gets fired from his Catholic school. So he's actually not that he consciously did this, but he is putting love over money and security too, because he cares more about being with John Lithgow. Again, it wasn't like a decision that he made, but what is interesting, I found that never really comes up. It's not like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or maybe we shouldn't have gotten married. It's like, no, that's never even questioned.
That's
like
a given.
Being with John Lithgow is all that Alfred Molina wanted. Okay, he loses his job, like they'll figure it out because they still have the love between one another. And even though they're living in separate apartments for most of the film for financial reasons, there is still that love for each other. And that's what gets both of them through their separation.
Totally. And I think what you're highlighting also underlines the fact that ultimately, what do you prioritize? And I think for these people,
right,
love and togetherness was always the priority.
Exactly.
And it sort of shows, without showing it, that let's just say, for example, for one of them, maybe love was not the top priority. Maybe money or having your own space and having your own apartment and all the things that you're used to, if that is more of a priority, I don't think this separation of this weird arrangement of staying separately would have made it through. Maybe they wouldn't have,
right.
Because I think our priorities might be the same when we start a relationship with somebody, but they change over time. And I think that's the other thing that the movie shows is that no, these people have somehow managed to stay lockstep on those priorities.
Right.
And I'm not even judging what those priorities are. Maybe it could have been the priority is money, and then this would have been a different movie altogether. But I think that's sort of the message, is that what do you prioritize in life, and how far are you willing to go to uphold those priorities in yourself and in your partner.
Sort of why I wasn't really sure why the movie was called Love is Strange. Do you know what that's supposed to mean?
I think it is that the word strange is a bit of from whose point of view, and it can be from anybody's point of view, from somebody else's point of view. Maybe it is a strange thing you did, that by getting married to this person, you sort of put your entire existence and life, a little bit in jeopardy, because now you're displaced. And for somebody else, that might be a strange choice to make, versus for these people, that's not even a choice. It's just sort of a given. So in that sense, how you view love is strange. And then it's also strange that an act that was done purely out of love can have such strange outcomes and repercussions. They didn't think about that. And then it takes these really comedic odd tones where suddenly this old couple is face to face with other family members, the young gay culture that maybe they were or weren't a part of, and it's sort of leading to all these strange outcomes. So that's how I read it.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you checked it out, and I'm curious what you thought of Ira Saxon, because all of his movies are like this. They're simple and low key. Money always plays a role, and housing always plays a role in some way, because he's a very New York writer and filmmaker, and getting an apartment famously is very difficult in New York, which is I guess no longer just New York's claim to fame. It's probably San Francisco as well and other places too. But
LA too,
for the longest time, New York was this place that if you get something, you never let it go or what have you. So he always has these flavors, but it's all told from a point of view of relationships and humanity.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I thought the film was fine. I actually did find it kind of dull in parts and most. Yeah, it's sort of like it never kind of got going. But for me, the performances of Lithgow and Alfred Molina are two actors that I really like a lot. That kind of got me through the film that I found kind of like meandery. But I mean, I understand what he was trying to do. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes holding a shot for way longer than, you know, I
Mhm.
necessarily would have if I was directing it, but I get what he was trying to do.
Mhm.
So, you know, I don't think I'll necessarily seek out any of his other films, but I wouldn't leave the room if one was on either, kind of thing.
Yeah, it can be a, you know, a tad dull here and there, but
Mhm.
I think I've watched it now a few times for whatever reason, and it's grown in my mind, and it's sort of one of those movies that stays with you, you
Mhm.
know. Well, I'm glad you checked it out.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.